Joining me now in studio is Bill Greuel, CEO of Protein Industries Canada. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
So I feel like people might understand or may have heard protein or plant-based protein when we talk about the world of protein, but maybe for those who are not familiar, could you maybe explain what Protein Industries Canada is all about?
Yeah, explain a supercluster, right?
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
That's the word.
Yeah. So I think maybe I'll talk a little bit about what we're trying to achieve, and that might lead us to what a supercluster is.
Perfect.
So, you know, in Canada, in Western Canada, we produce about 60 to 70 million metric tons of crop per year. And we ship the vast majority of that overseas as raw seed. There's billions of dollars of value locked up in that seed, in protein, in starch, in different products. Our objective is to fund science and innovation projects with a myriad of different companies in Western Canada to try to increase the value of processing, the degree of processing that we do for those crops in Western Canada. So we're an innovation supercluster, we're an economic growth engine. We really tried to bring together industry, academia, and government into collaborative research projects to try and grow the value-added processing sector in Western Canada.
So that all kind of clears it all up. We're done now. No,
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
I think the one question obviously would be why Saskatchewan? How and why Saskatchewan?
Yeah, so you know, I'll maybe think about this in terms of Western Canada because we have a Western Canadian mandate.
Right.
Yeah, and so we're one of 5 jurisdictions globally that's a net exporter of food here in Western Canada. So why here? I think if you look at the combination of innovative farmers that we have in Western Canada, the endowment of land that we have, the 28 million hectares of farmland that we have, great research and development, the University of Saskatchewan and other universities in Western Canada, the great growing conditions that we have, it all lines up to the fact that we have something to offer the world that nobody else has. Unique products that we can produce out of canola and peas and ingredients that food manufacturers around the world can use. I think that's why Saskatchewan.
For sure. It's something that you're never going to run out of.
It's something we're never going to run out of.
Or
hopefully.
you're always going to need, right?
Yes, yeah.
Absolutely. So you mentioned it before. I think I want to focus more on how we've seen it grow or where we think it's going. What are your thoughts on that when it comes to the protein and plant-based protein?
Yeah, the plant-based protein.
Yeah.
So, there's been a number of studies out recently, and we're actually conducting one right now, and the preliminary results of that is that if we look out to 2035, and I know that's 15 years out, but we expect the plant protein market to grow to about $100 billion by 2035. Wow. And that's about 16% compound annual growth rate from where we are today. That's the world consuming about 16 million metric tons of plant protein. So where it's going, it's going to be big. And I think the interesting thing is what's driving that. So consumers today are eating less, in Western economies, are eating less animal protein. They're really interested in plant protein for a couple of reasons. One is they're concerned about the environmental impact that livestock production has. Now, I have to say, I'm a firm believer and firm supporter of animal agriculture in Canada. We produce some of the most sustainable beef in the world.
For sure, yeah.
But there are consumers that are concerned about that, and that's their right. And so I think what we're trying to do is satisfy the need of diverse consumers. And so people are thinking about the health impacts of the food they're eating. They're eating differently. They want convenience foods. They are thinking about the health and environmental impacts of the food that they're eating. Plant protein lends itself well to fill that, to satisfy those trends.
For sure, and I mean, you've talked on it now where you are seeing more people's diets leaning towards that plant-based protein, if you will, the plant-based protein. Is it something that you have seen maybe grow, and maybe that's why we are seeing something of more interest in our side, that you're seeing more people interested in leaning towards that? Is there a concern or worry that maybe it's just a fad or a trend?
Yeah. I'm not worried that it's a fad or a trend. And even for animal agriculture here in Western Canada, there's still growth opportunities.
Right.
If you look at the trajectory for meat consumption globally over the same time frame out to 2035, globally meat consumption is actually going to increase. So there's opportunities for all kinds of protein. And I think so a few things that are underlying this that I don't feel are fads, right? Population globally is going to grow out to 2050.
Yeah.
We're going to have 3 or 4 more billion people that we have to feed in the next 25 years. This trends around convenience foods consumption, people eating different. I've got a 26-year-old kid. I don't think he's sat down at a table for a long time and ate a meal, right? People are eating differently. I don't think those are trends or fads that are going away.
We've talked about the trends and fads, but we're talking now if we can move into what we're seeing in today's world.
Right.
Obviously, everything has changed.
Yeah.
Everything's kind of in a way turned upside down. COVID has impacted everyone in different ways. How are you seeing that impact the protein industry?
Yeah, well, I think so. The companies that we work with and the private sector members that we work with, probably we saw three things. One was supply chain disruption. So if you look at food supply chains globally, they're very interconnected, they're very long, there's not a lot of resiliency or redundancy built into that. And you think about what it takes to get a food product on the plate in front of you. It's not just the food, it's the logistics, it's the packaging, it's all the ingredients. So right in the early days of COVID, we saw a lot of supply chain disruption. And so, everybody went to the grocery store looking for flour, it wasn't there, right? So that's just a sense of the supply chain disruption that we saw. I think our member companies, the people and the companies that are bringing food to our tables every day, also saw, tightening of their working capital, which means they were pulling back on innovation, maybe weren't investing as much in science and research. That's starting to come back now as they're getting their feet under them. And I think the third thing was capital markets really got tightened in March, April, May, and June. Because people who are investing in growth capital and risk capital, they were very cautious about investments that they needed to make. So I would say those are the three things. I think we're coming out of the back end of that now. We've got a highly resilient food distribution system in Canada. I think the term that we hear often is the food system bent but didn't break. I think we should be very happy as Canadians that we had access to food on our table. It wasn't easy for everyone. There's areas of Canada and remote and northern communities that struggled, and people who had disruptions in their own jobs. Food security was a concern. I'm not going to say it wasn't, but overall we had a highly resilient food system in Canada.
It's a pretty safe bet that hopefully now that we're seeing the talk of vaccines coming and the changes happening, hopefully we'll see a little bit of as you mentioned, it was a bend, and hopefully that bend is going in the right direction that we want it to go. You talked about, down the road, 15 years, 2035. Where would you hope, or where do you think in the next maybe 3 to 5 years, where do you see this industry going?
For this industry?
Yeah,
I think we've got a lot of excitement. We've got a lot of companies who are, I talk about the value chain from the producer right to consumer packaged goods. A lot of excitement over here at what I would call the right-hand side of the value chain. Consumer packaged goods companies, multinational companies, food innovators, startup companies, really thinking about incorporating plant-based ingredients into existing products or developing new products, and really seeing what's happening in Western Canada in terms of the ingredient manufacturing and what we have to offer. So I really think we're going to be put on the global map as a place for food innovation and ingredient innovation globally. I think we're going to see more investments, more capital investments in processing technology. We've got some really exciting pieces of infrastructure being built in Western Canada today. We announced a project not long ago with Ingredion and Verdient up around Saskatoon. We announced Mera Foods here in Regina just earlier this week. Big infrastructure processing facilities being constructed in Manitoba. I think we're going to see more investments because we have access to the raw material here.
Perfect. Well, you just touched on what I was going to talk about. So we are done. No, I'm just kidding. Did you want to talk a little bit more about those announcements? Let's talk about, not only what that means for Western Canada, Saskatchewan, but also within, Saskatoon, Regina, what that means for us.
Yeah, no, it's great. Well, so we'll start at Vanscoy up around Saskatoon.
For sure, yeah.
So Verdient is a processor out at Vanscoy. They've been operating for a couple years. They really scaled up the processing there. I think what's exciting about that project is the collaboration between Ingredion. So Ingredion is a company out of the US. They've been in the ingredient manufacturing space for over 100 years.
Oh, wow.
And so they're bringing expertise and technology and know-how into that facility. And then on the back end of it, I don't know if anybody saw the announcement, but it's actually collaboration with James Cameron.
Yeah.
The James Cameron from Titanic and
no
Avatar,
big deal.
right? Yeah, no big deal. I just like to name drop, so I thought I would say it. But he and his wife, Susie Amos Cameron, have a company called OMD, One Meal a Day. And they're really creating consumer packaged goods and food products for consumers in the US that want to increase the consumption of plant-based foods in their diet. So it's kind of speaking to this value chain approach that we're taking. So what does that mean for us in Western Canada, for farmers? New markets, a new opportunity, new selling opportunity. But I think, also for the processors and the rest of the industry, it's job creation, not only in the construction of the facility, but the operation of the plants. And then on the back end, the production of food ingredients and food products in Saskatchewan, that's a really, really great day for us.
Absolutely. And we're going to just see that continue growing, of course, coming down into Regina as well, and then over in Manitoba.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, you know what? I think we have everything that we wanted to talk about. Was there anything else you wanted to add or talk about? No,
it's just such a great amount of optimism right now in the plant protein sector, and we're really fortunate at Protein Industries Canada to be working with some of these trailblazing companies that really see a better future for the agri-food sector in Canada and the world. And COVID-19 has been a challenge, but it's also been an opportunity for us to think about redesigning global food systems to make sure that when the next shockwave hits, we're better able to deal with it.
You always got to be thinking outside the box.
You bet.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, Bill, if people do want to know more, want to learn more, want to know how maybe they can get involved, if there is a way that they can get involved, where can they go to find out more information?
So we've got proteinindustriescanada.ca as our website. You can find me on there and drop me a note directly. That'd be awesome.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Great.
Thanks.
Okay.